Hi, I'm Nick Armstrong, and this is Dear Fort Collins. It's a podcast designed specifically to discuss issues in and around Fort Collins, featuring experts from the city and county and elected officials. It's designed specifically to help make you a more informed neighbor of Fort Collins. This particular series of this podcast, I am interviewing city council candidates for even-numbered districts. I ran for city council back in 2021, and I know how hard it was to connect with every single voter and help spread the word about what my campaign stood for and why I wanted to run. And so I wanted to give each of the candidates their chance to get in front of you in this podcast in a medium where you might be comfortable, you might be sitting on your couch or driving in your car, able to listen to the words from the candidates themselves and get to know them a little bit better so you can make a more informed choice as a voter. Now, I do serve on the Parks and Rec board for the city of Fort Collins, as well as the Box Elder Sanitation Board and my neighborhood HOA board. I am not here in that capacity. I am here as a private citizen, hoping to make my fellow neighbors more informed about their choices so that they can go to the voting ballot and know who they're voting for and why. With that being said, let's bring in our candidate. Hey, Melanie, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name's Melanie Potyondy. I am a school psychologist here in District 4 in Poudre School District. I work over at Rocky Mountain High School. I've been a school psychologist for, over 16 years. I've got 2 little boys and a husband and really love Fort Collins. So I'm running for city council in District 4.
Melanie, why are you passionate about Fort Collins and what motivated you to run for office?
I moved back to Fort Collins. I went to college here and then had to leave for grad school. I moved back over 8 years ago and really committed myself to being an active part of this community. I wanted to be fully invested in being a resident, taking care of my city. And I think especially having children and taking care of other people's children at work, it felt very pressing to me to make sure that I was being of service to this community. And I'm really seeing, having worked with so many young folks, that this is a difficult city sometimes for people to build a life in, for some of our families and our young adults who are trying to move into their independent lives. It's all wrapped up in me being a person of service, but also seeing that there are these pressing needs for folks who are going to be inheriting this city, including my own children, just not as immediately as the students that I work for.
Can you share a specific project or an issue that you'd like to tackle first if elected?
I think that across Colorado and especially in Fort Collins, affordable housing is going to have to be the first thing that is tackled. I know council is working on zoning reform and our land use code currently, and some of those changes might have been decided by the time that I am on city council. But I think that there's going to be a long way to go, even if some of the zoning changes go through. To me, housing, unless you've got safe, stable housing you can afford, nothing else is going to fall into place. It's going to be difficult for you to secure your employment future, take care of your mental health, your physical health, make sure that your children are, progressing and feeling safe and becoming, folks who can be independent in our community. So I really think that's a foundational need, and we've got to keep pushing forward. And it's going to be a multi-phase process to get to a housing future that's going to work for Fort Collins long term.
What makes you uniquely qualified to represent District 4?
I think that I bring a unique perspective to District 4. I mean, not only am I a super hard worker and I think I'm running for the right reasons and that I am a public servant and I want to take care of this city, but my perspective as a working mom is underrepresented on council, or historically has been. And I also feel like my work with families in District 4 gives me a unique insight into what's going on in this part of town. And finally, I think just public educators and psychologists, both of which I am, have a really nice understanding of how systems work together and how the kind of hierarchy of needs plays into how we need to adjust our policy making to take care of our residents. So I think that my voice is one that typically hasn't been at the dais, and I do think that my perspective would really add some depth to council.
Who do you consider a role model in the realm of public service, and what have you learned from them?
So this is potentially going to sound cheesy or pandering, but it really isn't. I thought long and hard about this question, and I very much admire Kristin Stephens, who is now a Larimer County Commissioner and who has previously filled the District 4 City Council seat for, I think, at least 6 years. She is just the kind of leader that everybody, I think, should aspire to be. She is somebody who is coming at it from a true sense of duty to her community. She stays out of all of the drama that can be involved with being a politician and is just there to work hard and problem solve. She's able to get along with people from all different, sides of the political spectrum, so that she's making sure she's listening to her community and making smart choices. And she's just a kind human. And okay, I'm obviously a big fan of Kristin Stephens, but I really appreciate too that she does keep, or seems to keep, balance in her life, which I think is important, because being in elected office can be a really big job, but she's a great mom. She takes care of herself. She reads, she cooks. And I would like to have that kind of a full life when I'm on council. So I appreciate her as a person and also as a policymaker.
Melanie, if you could have any superpower to help your community, what would it be?
I love that you asked that, because I know that you're a Comic-Con guy. So I thought about this one too, because I am not as much of a comics person as you. But back when I was growing up, the X-Men were a really big deal, and those movies were coming out. And so first, I would lean towards Storm from the X-Men. Her powers, not only because she looks awesome, and I aspire to age gracefully as Storm has done, but I think with our water issues, being able to control the weather could be very, very useful. I like her aesthetics, and I also like her ability to control what's going on with our precipitation. And secondly, I would say Professor X, because something that I have observed in our city is that the superpower of being able to read other people's minds and recognize their true motivations and share that with other people might be really useful, because I think we're dealing with some tough issues in this city. And I think sometimes the snap opinion that people can come to when somebody has a perspective different from their own is that that person is deeply flawed, or that their motivations are deeply flawed, when really I think we all want the same thing, and that we want this to be a city that we love to live in and that is sustainable. So I think if I were Professor X, I could kind of help people to see that there's more behind these opposing opinions than meets the eye. So hopefully that is a satisfactory answer for a Comic-Con guy.
Of course. Melanie, what is one piece of advice that you've received that you didn't take, but you wish you had?
I started thinking about potentially running for office several years ago, even before I put my name in to fill the vacancy in District 4. And I went to a one-day training with an organization that helps prepare folks for office. And in the process of us coming up with our story, I felt a lot of pressure to focus in on things that were traumatic or super difficult, or, to have some sort of compelling story of overcoming obstacles. And I really felt a little bit deficient as a candidate, because I really have had a nice life. I've worked hard. I've been successful. I've had a lot of privileges that have helped me, pursue my dreams. And I've realized over time that I don't need to manufacture something that I'm not. At this point, I feel very comfortable saying the reason I'm running for office is because I feel like I have a perspective that is helpful. I'm committed to doing the work. I am a person I'm just a person who's a strong leader, versus me having to have a story of woe. That being said, I am very sensitive to being able to listen to other people's perspectives, knowing that my experience is not necessarily reflective of everybody's. So the bad advice was, make your story something it's not to appeal to voters, versus being authentic to yourself. I would hope that my authentic me is enough.
Is there any last bits of wisdom or things that you want the listener to know?
I think what I would really like folks to know is just that I am a person who I really think is the right person to fill the District 4 City Council seat. I have been working on this goal since I was on council for a hot minute back in 2021 when I filled the vacancy. I loved it. I worked hard then, and I think I'm even more informed at this point. And I, a couple years older, a couple years wiser, and I've really been working hard to be to know what's going on council and to know what the hot button issues are and to do my own research. So I really hope that people see me as somebody who can represent this part of town well. I'm in it for the long haul and would love people's votes. And if they would like to support me, we're only about 10 weeks out from the election. So my website is melanieforfoco.com. People can research me and read more about my policies or reach out to me with questions, or they could sign up to volunteer, which would be wonderful.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you're enjoying this series of learning more about your city council candidates. It's so important to get out there and vote, and do so from a place of comfort knowing that you're voting for who you chose and why you chose them. I'm Nick Armstrong, and I can't wait to see you next time.